maybe I should clarify those stages again. The way I see it, the multiple stages. The first stage is just glimpsing truth and remaining in it to some degree, and you don't want to think about all that stuff. You really do just want to check out of your mind and start to experience, like you've been in your mind the whole life, and now here's someone showing you the being. You want to get familiar with this thing, and screw all this guy talking all this stuff, who cares? So yeah, that would be, maybe that's a stage that you need more time in, and you don't want to necessarily clutter up your head, and you don't have to. You don't have to listen about it too much. But I'm talking about, like, it's not necessarily just stages. I mean, in a sense, I'm describing the way it is for all of us all the time, I think. But you don't even have to hold this structure as something that,
no, there is no,
or to be overly conscious of it.
I just feel like I have spent some time seeing that, where it was just most beneficial, pleasurable, blissful, whatever, to just be, and also easy to stay, not get affected by all that somehow. But there is all this stuff that is still there, and it's always mingling and somehow coming stronger, or something. I don't know.
Which means you're entering out into the next stage. I mean, it's a gradual thing. I mean,
so that you mean by stages is what you mean?
I'll say in terms of like what happened to me, that you can't never judge yourself. Oh, he's saying I'm at this. Everybody wants to be at this stage, and they don't like the idea of saying, realistically appraising that, okay, I'm in the early stage. That's great, you know. Or, I mean, I was in that sense of just becoming familiar with my being for close to 20 years. Of course, I had to live my life, but in a lot of ways, I just kind of got rid of it and as best I could, and got it out of the way, and kept things as simple as possible. But then gradually, just a natural process, I started to begin to be interested in. It just felt like I was being greedy at some point, that I didn't really need to go to more satsangs, or that my everyday wasn't just about logging flight hours in being, because that's what my life really was about for a very long time. Because it was just like I could just tell this was the other side of myself that solved, that gave the healing balm to all the nonsense of being a person in the world and so forth. And it just had to just keep going until it was done. And then life just begins to intrude again for whatever reason. That was my experience. And it was saying, well, okay, now it's time for you to integrate or more. So depending on, and also there's just your nature. Some people have a mental component that needs to be addressed intelligently and realistically. It's the other reason why I do this, is that often Advaita just, even the people with active minds have just said, stop it. Stop being you. You know, and other people don't, they're not really like that.
Yeah, I know most people, a lot of people I've seen, even myself, I've been asked to do that, and it just almost feels insulting. Like, what the fuck?
Stop your mind?
Yeah. Stop being you, like what you said. Stop being you. You are the problem. And it just, I see the purpose, but it's still...
Yeah, in that moment you have to ask yourself, am I resisting? Or is this just bad teaching? Or whatever.
What do they mean by stop being you? Stop all of this. What I'm saying,
well, that's why the clarity is there. It's like, for the sake of this pointing, let's try this. I mean, Mooji's quite nice about that. For instance, he says, you know, let's just put your stuff aside for 10 minutes. You can get it back later. You know, that's different from, you must go away and never think again. And, you know, some people very clumsily teach. So, yeah, and like in any moment in life, you have to look and see, well, am I just taking offense because it's my ego, or can I go with this, or am I going to learn something from this, or do I want to say no, or do I want to put my finger up and walk out the room? You know, it's your choice, so to speak, your choice. And on the other level, it's not your choice. So just let yourself be who you are,
So
and more than let yourself be, I'd be kind to yourself.
This is the confusing
Well, because you're not used to you. This is
They say
this is part of the evolution of what I'm talking about. The evolution of the mind out of black and white thinking. And don't look down on yourself. As I said, 90% of people absolutely cannot see beyond black and white thinking. Is it like this or is it like this? You hear it all the time. If you start looking for it, you'll see.
You definitely don't want to look down upon myself or
don't.
anybody, especially with this whole mind culture, pointing at the mind culture. It's more like just wanting to find clarity within. Most of it. It's not even actual clarity. So to stop the torture, what it feels like torture.
Well, often the Advaita teacher is trying to point you beyond the whole complex of your mind first. Right? And so to do that,
and that
is to give you, and that's to give you a perspective of like, when am I really actually looking for truth in my mind? Because it's not there. This clarification of how the mind works is really just the icing on the cake. Very important icing on the cake. Part of the cake for sure. But you really have to become very familiar with getting out of your mind and noticing when you're getting in your own way, and you are in fact identifying with yourself as mind.
Yeah, maybe that's the thing, yeah.
Because then the person wants to get rid of the person, and the whole thing is happening inside the level of mind. You have to let it go beyond, let it go under. I saw you when you were with Sal. It's true, you do that quite a bit. Sometimes you want to bring up your issues, but there's a point at which you just got to say, okay. And if they're saying, look, go beyond that, just for now. I mean, sometimes the teacher is discouraging because he's making too much of it. He's not being nice like Mujin, saying, here, put it over here, let's see what this is. But you should be able to become so familiar with that state and know it as yourself so deeply that you're willing to just go, all right, okay, and just drop it like that. Not necessarily be bullied into changing your behavior, because then you've got to notice your own dynamics of like, you're deeply invested in personal interdynamics, and this guy is not going to tell me to drop my mind right now.
No, I understand what you mean.
Just go, if this person is really, I appreciate that they're trying to show me something and they're not trying to score a point or be superior or whatever. And yeah, sure, I can just drop my stuff and see what's there. And pick it up a minute later if I want to. That's going to be my choice. So familiarity, you've got to accept, even if you just see the structure, that we're so familiar with ourselves as people. It's old karma. We're believing something's true that isn't actually ultimately true. So don't be surprised if it takes 20 years. I mean, it's terrible because you live in a community, a spiritual community, and everybody wants to go, I'm done and I'm so together and stuff. But really, just be kind to yourself and go, I get it, I'm still learning. It's cool. And part of that is disconnecting yourself. Part of the mind is, as I say, this interpersonal thing of like really invested in how you look. And people are always, the nature of the matrix is always inviting you back into your illusion. So even people who call themselves teachers or good friends are inviting you to be ignorant. A lot of the time.
How would it be? What would that look like?
Expecting you to, telling you that they're going to value you if you're spiritual looking or something, or making you feel that you can't be humbled, or you can't admit that you're wrong, or you can't admit that you've got something wrong, or that you
have to stand your ground and be strong.
I want to look like this, I'm in a spiritual community. I want to pretend that I'm totally together and I never get it wrong. Because there's nothing more humbling than being on the spiritual path for 20 years and then one day you just know you're a total dick. It's like you never learned anything, you know? And you just completely fail. That's actual ego breakdown. Like, have you noticed with spiritual work, quite often it's the exact opposite of what you think. It's at the exact time when you think, this is the worst thing. You learn about what your ego is and what your being is. Because your ego says, the worst thing is happening to me, and then you're still for a while, or you do some inquiry and you go, oh, this is it. This is where it actually happens. I get to figure out that I get for this thing to come up and me to see it again. That's what does the work. So it's such beautifully paradoxical. Do you know what I mean? Because people go on and on yapping about the ego and being in all these crusty old ways, but the ego is something that you are doing in real time and you are transcending in real time. It's very alive. And it's very you. No one's going to teach it to you, and you're not going to go, well, now I'm going to get rid of my ego. I thought I got rid of that last Saturday. I thought that pattern, people will say stuff like, yeah, I saw that, and then it never ever came back. And they'll make up all these stories like of their extraordinary success and their incredible enlightenment.
My experience is moment to moment.
And quite often your patterns come back 1,000 times and you chip off little tiny little slithers of it every time. And that's...
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. Well, that's...
Or if you're vigilant. If you have support, help, reminders.
If you're sincere about the truth and you seek those things, yeah. It's like... I forget the saying within Buddhism, but it was like almost like karma's like a rolling ball. If you point yourself in the right direction, don't expect it to go fast. Just know if you're going in the right direction, the result is assured. You just have to be not lying to yourself that you're actually going in the wrong direction. So if you just keep indulging your patterns and just don't care about it, then you're not on a spiritual path. If you care about it enough to keep looking and make little tiny things, do what you can with sincerity, then you're on the right path. And then again they will say, is it a path? Because to see the paradoxes even in time, in the Buddhist tradition you can get enlightened in a second, or it might take 1,000 lifetimes. People go, 1,000 lifetimes, I don't want 1,000 lifetimes. Well, in another sense, it's 1 minute. In one sense, you need to say 100,000 mantras, or you have to say one. It's got nothing to do with time. You just be now, and time takes care of itself. I don't know if that's relevant.
Sometimes it feels like lifetimes.
Well, patience is part of it. It's seeing the nature of the awakened mind and trying to see how that flows out and expresses itself in your life, in the choices that you make, in the ordinary human way you deal with everything. That's why you have to see the deep truths, like you have to build the building from the foundation. Because the deep truth is not just that's, again, the Advaita thing is, it's not just a thing and then you can just forget about the life. There's a character to emptiness. As they say in Tibetan, there's conventional bodhicitta, which is conventional love that you meditate upon, and then there's ultimate bodhicitta, which comes naturally out of the enlightened state. And the two can interact. You can use your intelligence with it, or you can just let it, as Advaita say, just naturally come out of an awareness of being. But I've seen so many Advaitas, for instance, who take the idea that, there's no good and evil, therefore there's no moral compass to life, therefore it doesn't matter how I live. Some of these masters, they have no morality and you'll never tell them. Well, I don't think that's true. I think that your intelligence will see that consciousness has a relationship with the heart. It's very clear. It's like coming out of emptiness into the one which is the heart, out into the two, which is the world, the multiplicity, and the zero, you can feel it even when you experience being, that there's an element of heart in it. Like love is the expression, it's the first expression of truth. And that can go out into the way you do everything, and inform you from a deep level how to do everything.